Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're all having a good day. So I thought today we'd talk about Wladimir Klitschko, Dr. Steel Hammer himself, and the Gypsy King, also known as Tyson Fury. And I thought I'd talk about the rematch between them that never happened. The reason I thought I'd talk about this is because, apparently I guess Klitschko's come out recently, or he came out after the Dylan White Tyson Fury fight and stated that he was inspired by that fight. I don't know what inspiration he found from that fight, but I mean, apparently he said he's motivated. He wants to fight, come out of retirement, and fight Tyson Fury. Look, this isn't gonna be a prediction video for that. That fight's not happening. Vladimir, don't do it. Please, just don't do it. Look, you were a machine. You were an absolute machine in your prime, but just that fight's not worth it. Okay, just don't take it. But anyway, this video, excuse me, isn't gonna be talking about that. It's going to be talking about the rematch that was supposed to take place in, I think it was either 2015 or 2016. I think 2016. But I thought I'd talk about that because I do think it definitely would have gone differently than the first, in my opinion, and I'll explain why. So essentially, what I saw from that first fight, I thought that fight was one of the most overrated and probably just one of the worst title matches I've seen in heavyweight history, right? And, I was really shocked to see how many people were acting like it was such a, dominant win by one guy and all this stuff, and how it was like, oh, it was Muhammad Ali esque or whatever. You know what I mean? So essentially, what I saw in that fight, I thought you had one guy who was basically just doing absolutely nothing and just looking like he didn't even care about the fight. You know what I mean? I was just basically a feint machine the entire fight. He was just fainting in Wladimir Klitschko, right? And then you had the other guy who was running around the ring just looking to pot shot and just, like throw flicker jabs and slapping left hooks here and there. And, just basically attempt to go to the distance without putting in much effort. And, whenever the fight would get close between them or getting close range, that's when both guys would just tie up and just hold each other, right? It was more of a wrestling match than it was an actual boxing match. You know what I mean? That's what it felt like. And, I just don't understand why people I don't know what they see when they look at that fight and they think, oh, it's such a dominant performance by Tyson Fury. He beat a reigning champion. He beat one of the best ever. I mean, don't get me wrong, Wladimir Klitschko certainly was the best ever, but when we look at Klitschko in that fight, he gave one of the worst performances of his career in that fight. You know what I mean? It was like when Klitschko fought back in his 20s. I mean, you guys, anyone who who's watched Klitschko before, remembers that Klitschko wasn't that great when he was in his early to mid to maybe late 20s, right? But when he found Emmanuel Stewart, that's when he started to string together wins. He was getting knocked out less and all that stuff, right? Um, but when he fought Tyson Fury, he just looked so unmotivated in that fight. It was so weird. And I've had a couple of my friends tell me that Klitschko basically threw the fight and how, Tyson Fury and, those guys just basically paid him to just do nothing. I don't think that's the case. I just think his motivation just swindled. And I think what has to do with his motivation kind of declining at that point was the fact that he didn't really have competition, legitimate competition that was really testing him at that point, because the competition he was facing was kind of, a lot of these shorter guys or guys who were stationary targets and that would just, fall into his punches and all that stuff, right? And it wasn't really legitimate competition in my eyes, right? And, when he fought Jennings, that was another fight he just looked terrible in, despite him winning, I mean, and I've already explained this about how, in that fight, I really don't think Klitschko should have gone the distance with Jennings. I really think that's a fight that Klitschko, he should have got the knockout in, and it was very strange. And obviously, when he fought a better fighter in Tyson Fury, that's when he completely just had nothing. Although, once it got up to the eighth round, or just the later rounds in general, that's when he started to land on Tyson Fury and started to make it a closer fight. But at that point, it was just, it was too late, and he just couldn't find the knockout power in him to, get Tyson Fury out of there, right? And when the rematch came around, you had Vladimir Klitschko. He looked like he was taking the rematch a lot more seriously. You could see that he was preparing for a better moved or well moved heavyweight who was obviously taller. Tyson Fury's like obviously 6'9". Klitschko was 6'6". He was used to fighting guys who were shorter than him, yeah, and that was that. I mean, I'm not saying that all of his opponents were shorter, but the vast majority of them were. And unfortunately, the rematch didn't come around. But Klitschko ended up fighting Anthony Joshua, and you saw when Klitschko fought Anthony Joshua, he took a sort of different approach. He was looking to outbox AJ, with in and out movement, and he was utilizing his jab a lot better in that fight. He was throwing his hands more. He was looking to bring his boxing, his high boxing IQ into the fight, and ultimately he gave a much better performance in that fight. You know what I mean? So that's basically how I saw that. But anyway, the conversation surrounding this video is about what would happen if Fury and Klitschko went ahead with the rematch. What would happen? And yeah, so what I think would happen in the rematch, I think Klitschko would have taken a different approach, but I don't think Fury would have taken that much of a different approach unless he fought a certain way, which I'll get into later. Now, in terms of this rematch, I see Tyson Fury boxing on his toes a lot more, just like he did in the last Klitschko fight, or like how he did in the Wilder fight, and basically just doing the same thing he did, right? And now in terms of Vladimir Klitschko, I think what he would have done differently is he would have thrown his hands a lot more. He would have taken more risks, and I don't think he would have fought Fury the same way he fought AJ, because like I said, he was looking to fight AJ like by boxing on his toes and all that. I think, I mean, don't get me wrong, he definitely would have been light on his feet, but I also think that he would have used or been a lot more aggressive in the Fury fight, considering Fury is a better defensive fighter than Joshua, and also considering that Joshua tried to bring the fight to Klitschko, and was a lot more aggressive, while Fury at that point was more of like an outboxer, looking to outbox his opponents and just run around the ring and all that stuff. So I think Klitschko would have definitely chased Fury down. I think he would have used his jab a lot more. He would have pumped the jab in Tyson Fury's face, and I think that's what would have happened. And that's basically it. I mean, like I said, I think Klitschko would have taken more risks. He would have used his jab better. He would have looked to close the distance with straight punches and maybe his left hook at times as well, and his uppercut. But aside from that, I think that's basically how I would see each fighter fighting. So that being said, the question is, who would have won if they had the rematch? So it's an interesting question because Klitschko would have been older, but I don't really see the age being a factor considering Klitschko gave a really good performance when he fought Anthony Joshua. But I think this would have been a really close fight, in all honesty. I really do. I think it would have been a lot closer than the first one. And to be honest, I don't really see a clear winner in this fight. And, I especially don't see a knockout in this fight. And, this brings me back to, a certain way that Fury would fight in this fight. And, what I mean by that is if Tyson Fury tried to, basically fight Klitschko the same way he fought, say, Deontay Wilder in the second and third fight by being ultra aggressive, then I think Klitschko would have countered him and probably, potentially stopped him, in all honesty, right? However, I don't see him doing that. I think he's smarter than that, you know what I mean? Because I think he knows not to do that against someone like Klitschko. Against Wilder, he could do it against Wilder because Wilder wasn't that great of a counterpuncher, you know what I mean? But against Klitschko's obviously more experienced and has better boxing IQ and all that stuff. So he's more experienced fighting guys like that, right? Now, I also don't. So like I said, I don't see Tyson Fury doing that. But if he did, I think Klitschko maybe would have stopped him. I don't see Fury knocking out Klitschko either because, like I said, he doesn't have the punching power that Joshua possesses, or that version of Joshua anyway. And I think that, especially if he tried to outbox Klitschko the same way he did in the first fight, then I definitely don't see him like catching Klitschko with a big shot or anything like that. So that's just my opinion. But so yeah, I don't see a knockout happening in this fight. You know, it's only if like Fury fought aggressive. But aside from that, I don't really see it happening. Um, but anyway, that being said, I think the fight would have gone the distance. I think it would have gone to a decision again. And in terms of who would get the decision is kind of tough to answer. And I think the deciding factor in who would have won the decision is, you know, in where the fight would take place, if that makes sense. So, for example, if the fight took place in, say, somewhere like in Germany or Ukraine or, you know, maybe even Russia, well, maybe not Russia, considering the, you know, the conflicts they're having these days. But, you know, if it took place somewhere like Germany again or Ukraine, I think they would have given the decision to Klitschko. However, if the fight took place in somewhere like England, like Manchester or somewhere, then I think they would have given it to Tyson Fury. And if the fight took place in like, you know, some neutral grounds like the US or Saudi Arabia, I think it could have been a toss up. I mean, they might have even, you know, they could have even made it a draw, you know, like how they did in the first Deontay Wilder fight. So, like I said, I don't see a clear winner in this fight. I just think it would be really close. I don't know how much more entertaining it would have been, but I do see it being a lot closer, in my opinion. Now, if I had to come up with a final prediction, I will say this. Given the fact that the rematch, was supposed to take place in Manchester, in the United Kingdom, I will say that Tyson Fury would have edged the decision. Excuse me. The decision. And that's that. It really depends on like who has the home ground, or the home advantage. Because even if Klitschko would have like edged it out, I still think they would have given it to Tyson Fury. And that's that. So my prediction is Tyson Fury by like a very narrow decision. But I'm just saying, I think the rematch would have been a lot more interesting. So that's that. Yeah. Anyway, that's my prediction, or that's my prediction for that rematch that never happened. Now if we're talking about a prime Klitschko, well then a prime Klitschko would have definitely, or you know, potentially could have beaten Tyson Fury, right? A motivated prime one anyway. But yeah, anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. Hope you guys have a good day. Let me know who you think would have won in the comments below, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Take care and peace.